Some objects refuse to become ordinary. You can put them on a wall, you can put a price tag on them, you can put them inside a glass case and call them a relic and move on with your life. But they don't let you. This guitar has been a witness on display in a strip club in Dallas, Texas for over a decade. It has the original strings from 2004. In the demo video, the E string snapped instantly. There was only one of these in the world. It was designed by one of the greatest guitar players who ever lived, ordered by him personally, and built to his exact specifications. He likely inspected this prototype, but the completed guitar didn't arrive at his brother's house until after his death. Now it's for sale on Reverb for 250,000 euros, and I cannot stop thinking about it. If you weren't there in the early 1990s, it's difficult to explain what Pantera meant. Not just to metal, to anyone who was making music that was honest and completely uninterested in mainstream approval. The album Vulgar Display of Power filled a void that no one even knew existed. You knew it with the opening gallop of Mouth for War. Who else was making music that honest at the time? The Abbott brothers were the definitive pioneers of groove metal. Dimebag Darrell Abbott fused extreme metal aggression with bluesy phrasing. He bent notes until they sounded like they were in pain. He treated the whammy bar with complete irreverence. He was also, by every account, one of the most generous human beings. He was the guy who stayed until every fan had a photo, the guy who made everyone feel like they mattered. His gear was never incidental to his art. Dimebag's Dean ML became one of the most recognizable guitars in rock history, not because it was expensive, but because it matched exactly the language he was speaking. And then there was the Razorback. Designed by Dimebag and built by Dean's custom shop, the Razorback was a radical evolution of the ML aesthetic, sharper, more extreme, almost violent in its geometry. It was a new direction entirely. I want to talk about what this particular guitar is, because there's a version of this story that's just famous musician's guitar for sale, very expensive, and that's not really interesting. What's interesting is what this object represents at the intersection of design, death, commerce, and memory. This is officially designated as a Dean USA Custom Shop Razorback Stealth. It's a one-off prototype, the only one ever built for Dimebag. The stealth in the name should not be confused with the Dean or Washburn stealth models. The headstock is unique, being labeled Razorback Stealth. The Clubhouse logo, a woman twirling around a golf club flagpole, was a finishing touch hand-painted at the custom shop. November of 2004, Dimebag signs with Dean and orders the guitar. Washburn's license to make Dimebag's signature guitars doesn't technically expire until March 2005. While contested, there may be a brief overlap period where both companies have some claim to his legacy. Dean is already making the new design. Dimebag almost certainly held this prototype guitar and planned to use it with his new band Damage Plan. There are no public records to confirm that he actually held it in its finished form. In the middle of the transition from Washburn to Dean, Dime is murdered on stage. The guitar is completed, the Clubhouse logo is added, and it's shipped to his brother Vinnie Paul, who puts it on display, where it hangs for years, while people drink and smoke and maybe glance up and think, that's Dimebag's guitar. The strings accumulate everything, dust, humidity, whatever was in the air in that room, 20+ years of time pressing into the metal. Then you hear the demo, and somehow it still sounds exactly right. Here's where it gets complicated, because a guitar this significant, this expensive, requires more than a story. It requires proof. The strongest pillar of provenance is Dean guitars themselves. Dean confirms a one-off build with custom artwork delivered to Vinnie Paul. First-party verification and chain of custody are the industry standards for establishing value, and the seller will provide a certificate of authenticity for peace of mind. This matters if you're thinking about buying it, but even if you're not, even if you never could, there's something worth understanding here. This guitar exists inside one of the most legally tangled legacies in rock history. In 2021, the Dimebag Darrell estate, represented by Rita Haney, Dimebag's longtime partner, filed suit against Dean Guitars for breach of contract and fraud. The guitar you are looking at on Reverb sits inside that contested space. It was built during the original endorsement period and at very least carries Dimebag's intellectual DNA in the design. He never got to perform in front of an audience or record with this guitar in its final form, which makes it, paradoxically, more fascinating. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. What is a guitar worth when it was made for a metal god, when he may have held it, may have played it, but certainly never performed or recorded with it? What's that worth? Is this just a museum piece or a player? Dime had this made to play. Simply preserving it and not playing it seems disrespectful. Keith at Essex Recording Studios decided to stave the original strings and put them in a case for posterity. He restrung the Clubhouse guitar so it can be played. I can't help but think, is there some Dimebag juice on those strings? Maybe it could be used to give us a Dimebag clone. This is the problem with objects that carry this much weight. They stop being tools. They become arguments. Every choice you make about them is a statement about what you value: legacy or use, memory or music, the past or the future. At $300,000 USD, whoever buys this guitar is making a very clear statement. The question is which one? So what do you actually learn from this? Because I don't want this to just be a story about an expensive guitar. I want it to be useful. First, gear carries meaning, and that meaning can work for you or against you. Dimebag Darrell understood this better than almost any other player of his generation. His Dean from Hell wasn't just his instrument. It was his signature, his statement, his identity made visible. When you saw the lightning bolt guitar, you knew exactly what kind of playing was about to happen. The instrument preceded the music. He was obsessive about tone, tuning, setup, and gear. His instruments were his collaborators. If you're a player, think about what your gear communicates before you touch a string. Not in a superficial way, in a deep way. Does your rig match your actual playing philosophy, or is there a gap between what you carry and what you play? Next, provenance matters not just for six-figure guitars, for everything you create. The strongest asset this guitar has isn't the build quality or the high-end hardware. It's the chain of custody, the confirmation from Dean, the documented display at the Clubhouse, and the estate connection. Without those, it's just an expensive guitar. With them, it's history. Whatever you make, music, art, products, code, document the lineage, know where it came from, and be able to show it. We humans love stories. Finally, and most importantly, the unfinished work is the most interesting work. Dimebag was not done. He was designing new instruments, signing with a new company, building what came next. The Razorback is not a capstone. It's a sketch, a first draft of a new chapter that never got to be written. And that's what makes it worth any price someone is willing to pay. Not because it's rare, not because it belonged to someone famous, but because it holds locked inside its angular body and its razor blade inlay the clearest possible evidence that the person who made it was still moving forward, still building and dreaming, still reaching towards something sharper, louder, and heavier. There's a line that stays with me from the demo video where Nick Sampson plays out a tune. The strings are ancient and corroded and barely holding together. He looks up and says, "Imagine the stories this guitar could tell." I keep thinking, it doesn't have to imagine. It already is telling them. Every object that survives its owner becomes a kind of witness. This guitar watched Pantera end. It watched Vinnie Paul build something new out of grief. It watched the Clubhouse open and close and become something else. It crossed an ocean and ended up in a studio outside of London, where a young guitarist played it for the first time and it gave him goosebumps. And now, someone, somewhere, is deciding whether $300,000 is the right price for all of that. Do you think you would play better with an axe that was made for a metal god? What is your favorite radical guitar body style? What do you think this guitar is worth? I don't have the money, but I'd be willing to trade some organs. I do have an extra kidney, lung, testicle. I know I'm keeping my extra testicle. What's your favorite Dimebag story? Tell me in the comments. The most interesting guitars aren't always the most expensive ones, and they're definitely not always the most practical. But they're the ones that make you think, the ones that start a conversation, and the ones that remind you why you fell in love with guitar in the first place. If that's the kind of guitar content you want more of, subscribe. Now, I'm already building a list. The most absurd, fascinating, and possible guitarist listings ever posted into the internet, and it's going to make for a very good video. I'll see you then.